David Cole, Engines of Liberty, The Power of Citizen Activists to Make Constitutional Law. Welcome to the riveting journey of citizen activists and their tireless fight for justice, as encapsulated in the book, Engines of Liberty by David Cole. Through an engaging exploration of issues such as same-sex marriage, gun control, and human rights violations, this summary provides insights into the power of activism and the role of the ordinary citizen in shaping constitutional law. You will delve into the historic legal battles, political lobbying, and inspirational stories of individuals who have defied societal norms, challenged oppressive laws, and brought monumental changes in society.
Milestones towards marriage equality. In 2015, the legalization of gay marriage in the United States was celebrated as a significant milestone in civil rights history, but the path to this landmark decision began decades earlier in a small Vermont child custody case. Susan Belmar and Susan Hamilton, parents of a young son, were at the heart of an emotional court battle after Hamilton's untimely death. Belmar's eventual victory highlighted the lack of legal rights for gay partners and ignited a movement of activists determined to change the status quo. Pioneering couples sued the state of Vermont for denying them marriage licenses, ultimately leading to the 1999 legalization of civil unions and the recognition of same-sex marriage in 2009. The battle for marriage equality. The journey towards marriage equality in California commenced in 2004, ignited by San Francisco Mayor Gavin Newsom's granting of marriage licenses to same-sex couples. The fight reached its climax in 2008 with the controversial Proposition 8 that sought to limit marriage to unions between a man and a woman. Despite initial success in garnering 52% of the vote, Proposition 8 faced legal challenges and was eventually annulled by the Court of Appeals, paving the way for marriage equality in the state of California. The struggle for marriage equality in California began with a bold move by San Francisco Mayor Gavin Newsom in 2004. He issued marriage licenses to same-sex couples while challenging the state's legal recognition of such unions. This sparked years of activism and legislative battles to attain full marriage rights for gay couples in the state. In June 2008, the California Supreme Court granted a historic win for the LGBTQ+ community by legalizing gay marriage. However, victory was short-lived as conservative groups sprung into action, proposing an amendment to the state constitution that defined marriage as a union between a man and a woman only. Collecting the necessary signatures, this proposition became known as Proposition 8. Campaigns on both sides spent $40 million in an attempt to sway voters' opinions. A significant television ad produced by conservatives featured a young girl asserting that she learned at school she could marry a woman, sparking concern among some voters about the influence of LGBTQ+ rights on children. In the end, Proposition 8 narrowly passed with 52% of the vote. The approval of Proposition 8 did not mark the end of the struggle. Legal challenges questioning its validity led to the U.S. Court of Appeals striking it down, thus preventing it from taking effect. When no state representative stepped forward to defend the proposition before the U.S. Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals' decision stood, and Proposition 8 was nullified. This action cleared the path for marriage equality in California, marking a major milestone in the ongoing nationwide battle for LGBTQ+ rights. A milestone for same-sex marriage. In 2013, Ohio resident John Arthur, chronically ill with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, wished to marry his longtime partner, James Obergefell. Due to Ohio's stance against gay marriage, the couple ventured to Maryland, where it was legal, to exchange their vows. Upon refusal of their home state to recognize their union, they filed a lawsuit against Ohio. This consequential case reached the U.S. Supreme Court and altered the constitutional definition of marriage. The landmark ruling in favor of Obergefell in 2015 decreed that gay couples deserved the same rights as heterosexual spouses, invoking the four key reasons: the freedom to marry one's chosen life partner, upholding the right to intimate association, legal protection for gay parents and their families, and extending marital rights and benefits to same-sex couples, including inheritance and tax considerations. Unveiling Florida's pro-gun momentum. The year 1968 witnessed significant tragedies in the United States, including the assassinations of Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King. These events led to the implementation of the Gun Control Act, which aimed to restrict mail-order gun sales. Despite this, activists have consistently pushed for more lenient gun laws, with Florida being particularly receptive. A key driver behind Florida's pro-gun movement is the National Rifle Association, NRA, aided by lobbyist Marion Hammer, the organization's first female president. Hammer's influence played a crucial role in making Florida the first state to pass the Stand Your Ground law in 2005, asserting the right to self-defense against threats on one's own territory or in public spaces. The NRA also encountered obstacles in Virginia, where a 2002 lawsuit sought to ban gun sales. However, amidst the challenges and the Virginia Tech massacre in 2007, the appointment of pro-gun judges John Roberts and Samuel Alito to the Supreme Court by President Bush led to a favorable verdict for the NRA in 2008, marking Virginia's gun ban unconstitutional. Uncovering Korematsu's injustice. Pearl Harbor marked a dark chapter in American history. In the aftermath, 110,000 Japanese Americans were interned under President Roosevelt's order. Fred Korematsu, an American-born son of Japanese immigrants, defied the order and fought for his rights all the way to the Supreme Court. However, a 1944 ruling supported the questionable policy. Decades later, the persistence of human rights organizations led to revisiting the issue, and in 1988, President Reagan finally offered an apology, acknowledging the error and providing compensation for those affected. In the shadow of Pearl Harbor's tragic events, a lesser-known narrative unfolded, highlighting the racially prejudiced treatment of Japanese Americans. The internment of 110,000 Japanese Americans on the West Coast began in 1942 by President Franklin D. Roosevelt's order. One American-born citizen, Fred Korematsu, dared to defy the order and sought justice. Represented by the American Civil Liberties Union, Korematsu's case made it to the Supreme Court. The 1944 ruling, however, validated the controversial policy, treating Japanese Americans as suspects due to their ancestry alone. Fast forward to 1979, and the tireless work of human rights organizations led President Jimmy Carter to launch an investigative committee to examine the troubling issue. The committee then urged President Ronald Reagan in the 1980s to rectify the Supreme Court's mistake. Though Reagan was initially resistant, irrefutable evidence eventually came to light. Lieutenant John DeWitt's report, a key piece of evidence in 1944, suggested that West Coast Japanese communities covertly communicated with the Japanese Army using radio signals. The truth was far from it. The FBI and the Federal Communications Commission had initially found no evidence of any suspicious activities, yet this crucial information was left out of the final report. Armed with this revelation, Reagan had no choice but to address the past injustice. In 1988, he offered Korematsu and the interned Japanese Americans an official apology and compensation of $20,000 each, a long-awaited vindication of their fight for civil rights. Unmasking military human rights abuses. Activists have continuously played a crucial role in unveiling human rights violations, even during times of war. Lawyers Jamil Jaffer and Amrit Singh utilized the Freedom of Information Act to uncover shocking details about the U.S. military's conduct in foreign lands, such as the mistreatment of inmates at the infamous Abu Ghraib prison and Guantanamo Bay. Their findings eventually led to the Supreme Court ruling that the actions at Guantanamo violated the Geneva Convention, emphasizing the mandatory adherence to the protection of prisoners of war. After World War II, human rights violations sadly persisted in times of war. One glaring example was the appalling treatment of inmates by U.S. soldiers at Abu Ghraib prison, exposed in 2003. Activists, determined to seek transparency and justice, played an indispensable role in effecting change. Lawyers Jamil Jaffer and Amrit Singh were instrumental in this cause, leveraging the Freedom of Information Act to uncover details about the secret activities of the U.S. military abroad. Their investigation led to alarming discoveries, such as the CIA being granted permission by President Bush to secretly detain and interrogate suspects without legal protection following 9/11. Furthermore, they found documents detailing prisoners' deaths after severe interrogations and disturbing techniques like defecating on the Quran and imposing sensory deprivation on detainees. The lawyers also unearthed evidence of soldiers receiving threats for reporting prisoner abuse and being told to stay silent. In a broader investigation in 2006, Jaffer and Singh focused on the practices and conditions at the notorious Guantanamo Bay facility. Contrary to the government's claim that the prison strictly housed dangerous terrorists, the records showed that only 8% of detainees had a proven connection to al-Qaeda, and a mere 16% were Taliban fighters. The investigation also revealed the lack of legal representation for suspects, who were, instead, provided U.S. military officials that often failed to mount any defense. These discoveries illustrated the violation of basic justice system procedures, prompting the Supreme Court to take action. The court ultimately declared Guantanamo's actions as contrary to the Geneva Convention, which encompasses laws safeguarding prisoners of war, and emphasized the need for future adherence to these protective laws. Impact of activism on drone warfare. While President Obama's election campaign promised hope and change, his administration's support for covert drone operations sparked controversy, prompting a strong activist response. Despite the apparent advantages of drone use, such as avoiding the deployment of U.S. soldiers into dangerous situations, the operations carried a heightened risk of innocent civilian casualties. It was only through relentless pressure from civil activists and human rights organizations, such as the New America Foundation, that the administration was pushed to establish new regulations for drone usage. In Obama's revised policy introduced in 2013, drone strikes were limited to only those posing a direct threat to Americans and when no other options were available. Additionally, stringent government confidence in not causing harm to innocent bystanders was required. As a result, significant decreases in drone strike deaths and civilian casualties were observed. This episode demonstrated the far-reaching impact activists can have in shaping policy and invoking change.
In Engines of Liberty, we have witnessed the enormous impact of citizen activists in shaping constitutional law, as they relentlessly fight for justice and equality. Be it the battle for same-sex marriage or the determination to curb human rights abuses, these activists have displayed an unwavering commitment to their beliefs, changing age-old perceptions, and establishing new legal precedents. As we wrap up this extraordinary journey, it is crucial to understand the significance of citizen activism in keeping a check on injustice, and ensuring that our society continues to progress toward a more equitable and fair world.